Chapter 11, Dovetail Ranch, San Diego County, California. February 11th, 1967, 10:35 a.m. Patch popped open his eyes and sat up on the vinyl lounger. The trip to Houston and the meeting with Renault had left him groggy. A series of beeps weaved in and out of the blue box signal. Patch lifted the sophisticated box closer.
Hello, Mr. Patch Kincaid.
Lieutenant, how are you?
I was just going to ask you the same thing. I'm fine. Ali humiliated Terrell.
Yeah, what's my name?
Patch Kincaid.
Very funny. What's your claim of fame today? He asked.
My claim of fame is some serious business north of you guys in Corona.
What's up?
Federico took a series of photos in town. An agent for the Central Intelligence Agency, Baker Finch, in outdoor gear as if he had been out in the field, was photographed along with others in a restaurant called Breakfast in Corona. Vinny is telling me that Finch is the high-level intel agent Denali spoke of.
What does Finch want? Asked Patch, standing on the pool tiles. What is he up to?
Very baffling, Patch. Federico remained with his own friends at the restaurant while Finch was there with two other men. It's a rural place and the odds of someone taking pictures of Finch is remote. Finch had breakfast and they engaged in a serious type of talk for an hour, according to Federico. They left via a back road to 91 and then to a small airport. Denali has confirmed a commuter plane flew them back to Los Angeles International. He thinks, and Finney concurs, that Finch and the others may have been at the Naval Hospital in Corona, but that's just speculation.
Were they around Mendesia's ranch?
No, sir.
Patch smiled at her use of the word sir. I see. Maybe they were just passing through, ma'am.
Oh, so formal.
She said in her bouncy voice.
Baker Finch wouldn't just pass through isolated Corona. He's up to something, and they're working with Denali now to identify the others in the photograph.
Was Mendesia's ranch mentioned at all? Asked Patch.
No, we're just being cautious about Finch. He's very good.
Well, I'm sure he is.
Good job with Renault, too, Patch. Very detailed notes. I'm glad you can see the Ali fight. He is the greatest.
So he says, laughed Patch. Listen through that fight up in Maine. An invisible punch.
No. Ali's always been able to deliver a punch while moving back. Draws the opponent into a false sense of security and then into the punch. And on that punch, he brought his weight down on his lead foot. He knocked Liston on his ass. Now, whether Liston could get up again is another story.
Well, thank you, Howard Cosell. What's my name?
Be careful, Patch, especially with Finch. Hope to see you soon.
Sure thing. End transmission. Patch set the blue box on the lounger. Two things were happening in his head presently. He had grave doubts whether he would ever return to Apex Junction, and he was devastated about not being able to see Shari and the boys again. Meinkewitz was not hopeful about achieving the technological ability to precisely move bubbles at the quantum level. He sat back, closed his eyes, and let the sunshine caress his face. And he felt awkward about having such a good rapport with Natalie. Patch slept again, this time for 6 hours into the afternoon. He chowed down a supper of chicken, rice, and beans with Mike and Meinkewitz. Apple pie and vanilla ice cream followed. Then Meinkewitz accepted the call from Denali and was still outside when Patch helped Dr. Mike load the dishwasher. Mike, explain this scenario to me again. The chronology of when they took Kennedy's body out of Dallas. Did they move the president's body during the flight to Washington? Is that how they did it? First of all, it isn't a scenario. Mike closed the dishwasher. It happened when Johnson was sworn in. Kennedy's body was placed in the body bag and into a gray shipping casket. Secret Service agents Kellerman and Greer moved the body from the Dallas casket on the aircraft shortly after they took it on board at 2:14 p.m. in Dallas. Jackie Kennedy went on board at 2:18 p.m. LBJ was sworn in around 2:36 p.m. and Air Force One left the runway at 2:47 Dallas time. Everyone surrounded the Dallas casket during the flight back to D.C. JFK must have been removed sometime between 2:14 and 2:36 p.m. Kennedy's body was taken from the aft compartment through the starboard aft galley door. Immediately after his body was taken out of the Dallas casket, they stored the gray shipping casket with Kennedy's body inside one of Air Force One's 2 luggage compartments during the flight to D.C. Sounds like a tight window, and somebody could have opened the other casket, said Patch. Denali has heard an Air Force tape where Roy Kellerman of the Secret Service is talking on the radio to Gerald Bain, head of the White House detail of the Secret Service back at CROM, the White House Situation Room. And Kellerman tells Bain that everyone is aboard, that they are waiting for the swearing in to take place, waiting for a judge to arrive. And then Kellerman suddenly tells Bain in so many words, "I have to call you back, Jerry, after the body." Garrison needs that tape, said Patch as he pushed through the swinging door into the dining area. Denali heard it. He doesn't have it. Meinkewitz waved his arms as he crossed the room. "Okay, listen up." Patch turned. "What's going on, Ray?" "Has this Baker Finch started firing his 6-shooters into the sky?" "Hold on, Patch. Tomorrow morning, and this is directly from Denali, we're to proceed to Ramsey." Damn, I was just getting used to this place. "Professor Eagleton owns a 62 red Caddy. We casually head out in the Caddy tomorrow morning. From Ramsey, we'll be flown to Texas and then drive a 64 black Ford station wagon to the house in Grassley, Louisiana." "Is it because of Finch?" asked Patch. "I think so. Precautionary but smart. Garrison investigation will have no knowledge of the network or what we're doing. Once we're settled in, we'll remain in the shadows and just do our work." "What about the pushback by the government against Garrison?" asked Patch. "We'll get more intel later and identify the members of the press, as well as the government players who will be trying to destroy Garrison. I want you to fully understand who and what we're up against." "Why don't we just leave now?" asked Mike. "'Cause those aren't our orders, Doc," said Meinkewitz sarcastically. "Just relax. What are you complaining about? This place is like a palace." "Ray, why is it I don't think you're telling us everything?" asked Patch. "Because I'm not. There's a debate on TV tonight. We'll watch that. Mark Lane versus Louis Nizer on KTTV. Watch that." "I'm surprised they're not after Lane," said Patch. "There are. He's getting death threats," said Meinkewitz. "And as for this motley crew, we need to be armed at all times. We just don't know what Finch and the others will do, as evidenced by what Natalie told you this morning. We need to be armed and ready to roll." Meinkewitz slowly turned as if he had an auditorium audience. "You never know what you can get out of a debate. It could be boring as hell. If it's something new, we'll eventually forward the information. Forewarned is forearmed." "Samuel Schellebarger," said Patch. "Who the hell is he?" asked Meinkewitz. "That quote, 'Forewarned is forearmed,' is from his book, The Prince of Foxes. Now how do you know that, Patch?" "You made me read it at Hastings Mountain." Meinkewitz thought about that. "Why would I don't even know what the hell you're talking about, Patch." "The Adventures of Andrea Orsini, a captain in the service of Cesare Borgia during the conquest of Romagna." "I made you read that?" He threw up his arms and headed outside again. "Well, I better read it myself first." "Did he really assign that to you, Patch?" asked Mike. Patch smiled. "Of course he didn't. I'll tell him some other time." Professor Eagleton worked every night at the Palomar telescope. Sometimes he slept at the observatory during the day. Patch appropriated the professor's recliner, and he reclined next to a colorful Tiffany lamp positioned about 20 feet away from a maple, louvered console color TV. Eagleton's main room consisted of harvest gold stucco walls, dissected by rich redwood beams and upper portal windows. Patch, rifle by his side, pushed the brown leather recliner back almost horizontal as Meinkewitz turned the channel selector on the console TV to channel 11 in Los Angeles. Mike, sprawled across the couch, left his rifle on the table. Meinkewitz shook his head as he caught sight of Patch, pushed back in the recliner. Oh, make yourself at home, Patch. Well, yeah, there's a high chair in the kitchen, Ray, from Eagleton's granddaughter if you need it. Ha ha. By the way, there's no way I would have assigned you that book to read at a government research facility. Patch bellowed out a laugh. Meinkewitz chucked a pillow at him from the sofa. If it's payback for Bronco, we're even. We'll see.
Opportunity would be given for a reply by the Warren Commission. Accepting our invitations, and here in the studio with us are Mr. Albert Jenner, an assistant counsel to the Commission, and Miss Alfreda Scobie, a Commission staff member. One of America's most eminent attorneys, Mr. Louis Nizer, author of The Jury Returns, has agreed to present the major brief for the Warren Commission. Mr. Nizer wrote the analysis and the commentary of
the shooter, since the weapon is presently grouping high and to the right with respect to the point of aim, and would have tended to reduce the need for leading a moving target in aiming the rifle. And this, of course, is on the result of expert testimony. May I give you just one more and I'll conclude?
The debate, already started, took place in Los Angeles. Mark Lane, who seemed to be everywhere, began talking about Senator Ralph Yarborough smelling gunpowder in Dealey Plaza. He wasn't the only one, said Patch. It was in the air. And finding that German Mauser at the depository, I can verify that.
We come to downstairs, Mr. Lane. I say that you quoted the commissioner saying it without giving the authority that it was in Mr. Hoover's letter that you quoted.
Patch stood as the debate continued on TV. I'll say this for Mark Lane. He's trying to get the word out there. Then an incredible argument broke out between Lane and Nizer. Nizer began a coordinated attack on Lane. Lane demanded that they debate how the president was killed. The facts. The venom in Nizer's voice intensified. We're dealing with a very powerful enemy, said Dr. Mike. Meinkewitz lit a cigar. Sure, target, destroy the person, and to hell with the facts. They all do that, Ray, said Patch, convinced the public that Lane is a Looney Tune. Sounds like the Inquisition, said Dr. Mike. Nizer zeroed in on Lane.
On arrival at the hospital, I told newsmen that 3 rifle shots had been fired. There was then no doubt in my mind that the shots were rifle shots. In my opinion, only 3 shots were fired. So Senator Yarborough, when you examine the affidavit, which he really made, says it came from the rear, while he is quoted by the suggestion of gunpowder smell of saying that it came from the front in the knoll. I thank you very much for your generosity and time.
We thank you, Mr. Nizer, a most lucid exposition, and Mr. Lane for his patience in listening and not interrupting. Ms. Scobie, Mr. Jenner, and we will come back for Mr. Lane's counter.
The vast majority of American people say they cannot accept the central conclusion of the Warren Commission report that Oswald was the lone assassin. And Mr. Nizer has charged me and others with being irresponsible. I will not use that word in return, but I think that those who are watching can watch the program develop and see who best that word should be applied to.
That lawyer is very effective, said Patch. Well, he should be, said Meinkewitz. Nizer was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the highest paid lawyer in the world. Well, I'd hire him, said Patch, sitting up. Hopefully you won't have to, said Meinkewitz, and the 3 men laughed. The blue box buzzed. Oh, Denali's calling. Excuse me, I'll be right back. Patch raised his brows at Mike as Meinkewitz moved into the kitchen. You ever notice, Patch, how every one of these defendants of the Warren report is belligerent as hell? To me, that signals they're defending a fraud. They've been told to defend it and make Oswald the assassin. Fraud, just like the commission itself. Patch heard Meinkewitz speaking loudly in the kitchen. Then he pushed through the swinging door. Oh, this is really crazy. Let me
was
tell you. I'm
much
going to do what we can.
anxiety, not
Okay, yes,
only
sir.
because of the loss
I
of
hear
the
you,
president,
Denali. I hear you.
But because everyone hungered
That was
to
quick,
find out
said
what
Patch
the
as he
truth
stood.
and facts were
Patch and
about
Mike
that
scampered
attack.
onto the terrace, followed by Meinkewitz. Patch appeared the span of stars, materializing over the desert floor in San Diego County. Meinkewitz led them toward the corral fence. He spoke in a lower voice. Denali has told me he has verifiable evidence that the CIA's counterintelligence staff is secretly trying to subvert Garrison's investigation. Well, if Oswald did it, what the hell are they involved for? Asked Patch. Angleton. Patch crunched his teeth. That bastard left me beaten with no water in Mexico City. The agency itself wants to nix Garrison from investigating Oswald and the CIA-affiliated Cubans. We knew that was coming, said Patch. The CIA counterintelligence staffers are supposed to prevent penetration of CIA activities by a foreign intelligence service, and now here they are screwing around with Garrison. No one has said a peep about Oswald's activities in Russia. They're worried about Angleton's activities with Oswald and everything else leading up to the assassination, said Patch. You think the Warren Commission knew anything about this? Now what happens? Asked Dr. Mike. Lieutenant Colonel Kawaii will have us flying out of Ramsey tomorrow afternoon on a C-141. We'll land in Texas and travel in the station wagon to Grassley, Louisiana, to a house in an expanded office space. Is it safe down there? Asked Mike. 30 miles outside of New Orleans, said Meinkewitz, with all the fictitious names and documents. We have arms stored on site if you're worried, Mike. When I think of them going after Garrison, I think of what President Kennedy said. The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. Dovetail Ranch, San Diego County, California, February 15, 1967, 7:05 a.m. Patch was awakened by Meinkewitz. Rise and shine! He positioned the pillow over his head. Enough, Ray! Hey, Ray, called Mike from downstairs. Problems at Hughes. I knew it, said Patch, banging his fist against the mattress. Patch tossed the other pillow and threw on his pants. He jogged behind Meinkewitz down the stairs. A reporter in a shirt, tie loosened and hair not combed, was on live TV from Los Angeles.
We will be able to process our film of the explosion at Hughes Air Force Base early this morning.
Are you kidding me? Growled Meinkewitz. Now I know why no one's answering that blue box.
To repeat our top story this morning, a massive explosion in the Central Powell building at approximately 6:22 a.m. this morning has spread to adjacent hangars. We do not know at this time whether the test aircraft have been affected or if there's been a loss of life.
Oh my God, said Patch, clenching his fist. Why is their box shut down, Ray? To prevent intrusion, he said, trying again to connect with the tones on the satellite. Damn! A few minutes later, somebody in the TV control room queued up a freshly developed high-contrast film of the Hughes base. The long stretch of dry lake extended under a blue sky. They swung the camera to the hangars and barracks where Patch had been taken just days ago. Black smoke spun into the sky. That's the secure area, yelled Patch. Meinkewitz rubbed his chin. Sabotage. Or abandoning ship if those intel people came back on the base, said Patch. Get the keys to the caddy, now, called Meinkewitz, grabbing his UCLA windbreaker. Then both of you get the rest of the rifles in the study cabinet. This is much worse than we thought. What about Denali? Asked Patch. Can't break security now. Get the damn weapons. Let's get the hell out of here. Patch, followed by Dr. Mike, ran back to the ranch house. Something was wrong at Hughes, and security may have broken down. He opened the side wood door and pulled out several M1 rifles and sidearms. Bring these to Ray. I'll get the keys. Mike carried the M1s and Patch held 2 rifles as he rounded the kitchen door, pulling the keys off the hook. He sprinted out the rear door as Mike loaded the sidearms into the plush Cadillac. Wind swept across the desert. You drive, Patch, said Meinkewitz. A map spread over his legs. Ramsey is north of here. We'll take Route 76 out of here and 79 north. Meinkewitz sat in the middle, and Dr. Mike on the outside. Patch started the powerful Cadillac engine. Meinkewitz folded the map from east to west. My guess is somebody cracked security at Hughes, and hanging around here is probably not a good idea. Baker Finch? Asked Patch. Who knows? Patch spun the Cadillac 180 degrees, spewing the dust and the burgeoning sunlight up the mountain road. Never give up, do they, Ray? No, they don't. Meinkewitz bowed his head as Patch sped down the other side of the hill. He folded his hand and pushed his index fingers together. Just follow this road to the highway, Patch. The Cadillac bounced as Patch raced at high speed. We better hope that Kawaii has somehow been alerted to this bullshit. If not, gentlemen, this mission is over. Still nothing on Beauregard's channel as Patch proceeded north at 80 miles an hour, and the hills blurred by him in the rural valley near Temecula, California. He may be dead, said Meinkewitz. You saw the damn destruction on the TV? Patch thought about Natalie. You shouldn't speculate until things are confirmed. He's right, said Meinkewitz. Keep your fingers crossed. Patch was stunned to see the hefty Lieutenant Colonel Kawaii standing outside the main gate. Kawaii waved a light-colored Jeep forward. Patch braked and slowed the Cadillac. Then he buzzed down the electric windows. Inside! He yelled with a sense of urgency that sent Patch's adrenaline skyrocketing. Get this car back to Dovetail Ranch, said Meinkewitz. Yes, sir, said Kawaii, as if Meinkewitz were his superior. All three men crawled into the Jeep. Ray, there's a high-level alert for conspirators throughout the intel agencies. Well, somehow they're onto us, said Meinkewitz. Patch leaned forward as Kawaii in his fatigues and camouflage baseball cap started the Jeep. Beauregard and Tompkins, are they all right? Not if they were inside those buildings, he said, looking over his shoulder as he pulled out. Patch closed his eyes as the Jeep skimmed the bumpy base perimeter. You'll be airborne as soon as possible. Just get us the hell out of here, barked Meinkewitz. I'll do the best I can, sir. Without breaking network security, I can't stick my nose into those explosions at Hughes, said the lieutenant colonel. They'll start asking questions. The whole network will be threatened. Okay, just get us to the damn transport. We'll deal with Hughes later. Chapter 12. C-141 Transport over Texas, February 15, 1967. Meinkewitz finally convinced Patch, as the transport climbed upward from Ramsey Air Force Base, that trying to contact Beauregard or Tompkins was just too risky. During the flight to Texas, Meinkewitz sat atop 3 boxes as Dr. Mike slept on clothing bags in front of a humongous metal tank. Patch paced the floor. The cargo plane's engine's low resonating hum was about the only consistency in this operation. They were several hours east, and still they heard nothing reported about what happened at Hughes. Patch, I figured you walked about 10 miles on this flight. Patch stopped, looked over his shoulder, and walked up to Meinkewitz. Ray, if they're captured and talked, we'll have a reception committee waiting for us in Texas. I'm aware of that. Patch put his hands on his hips. Then why aren't you more upset? I only get upset when I know something for a fact. Right now, Patch, I know nothing, and I have no other viable options. Patch exhaled. I'm supposed to meet Ferry in a few days. He's the one guy, believe me, that we don't want to jeopardize. If they pay him off, or worse, we lose a massive amount of information. He can open the Pandora's box. When we were in New Orleans, I heard him talking about triangulation and ambushes, well in front of November 22nd. I 100% agree, Patch. I told Finney days ago Garrison should sequester Ferry away somewhere. When Ferry names names, this whole thing will blow up in their face. Meinkewitz nodded. Just simmer down, Patch. Nobody knows about this house outside New Orleans. Denali has handled everything. We have the resources, the contacts, and the whole network to feed information. It will work, trust me. Patch stared at his old friend. He pointed at Meinkewitz and smiled. If it were anyone else, I'd say you were crazy. And I'd be the first one to say I am crazy. Challenging the intelligence agencies, I should have my head examined. Then why are you doing it, Ray? Meinkewitz slid off the boxes. I'm doing it because I love this country. I know what this country was like before they killed Kennedy, and I'll fight to my dying breath to take them down. Patch pressed his lips. That's why I believe you, Ray. 977 Mulberry Road, Grassley, Louisiana, February 18th, 1967. From the outside, it was a restored, quaint Greek revival house with a miniature picket fence and dormer windows. The property deed stated that George B. Claiborne of Grassley bought the house 25 years ago, a real person according to Meinkewitz. Behind the home, a shortened trail traced the perimeter of an expansive field extending to the woods and occasional swamps several hundred yards away. Meinkewitz insisted they were only 27 miles from New Orleans. Patch liked the wood floors and the fireplaces. Even the molding provided a charm not seen in newer homes. Also not seen in newer homes was a sliding brick panel next to the living room fireplace that would make Edgar Allan Poe proud. When Meinkewitz pushed a button across the room, the bricks easily and quietly slid to the side. Beyond was a wide stairway that sloped deep below the yard. I feel like I'm in a James Bond movie, said Patch. He remembered when he first saw Sherry reading an Ian Fleming paperback at the movie theater ticket booth in Spokane. Damn. What's the matter? Nothing. Right. Even before they arrived in the station wagon, Patch continued to worry about Beauregard and Tompkins. He descended under the light panels and down the slate stairs behind Meinkewitz and Dr. Mike into a brighter area at least 20 feet below ground. The area was nicely climate controlled and everything smelled new. They were at a distance from the main house. In the center was an office with 3 offices to the right side, and in the corner was a door marked in red letters, Centipede Room. There were typewriters, phone lines, and a secure teletype in the corner. A clear pneumatic tube traced the wall down to the counter. Sleeping quarters were across from the Centipede Room. Several TV monitors formed a triangle on the center console. Who exactly put this together? Asked Patch, turning to Meinkewitz. The government is a big entity, Patch, filled with good, bad, and indifferent people. Some of the good people funded this, led by Denali. The phone lines and the teletype, said Mike. Won't they be able to trace our calls? It's linked into the network and can't be billed or traced. As far as the phone company is concerned, these lines don't exist. What's with the pneumatic tube? Asked Patch. There's an eel point finial on the fence post. It's a matter of removing the finial, pulling out the plastic canister, and then placing a confidential item inside. From this room, we can electronically get the transport canister back in here and send it back to the fence. That's very good, Ray. Patch walked over to the teletype and phone lines. So, is this where I call Ferry? Correct. We don't need him involved over here. No one outside the network is to know about the... Ray, what are you doing? Starting a taxidermy collection here? Asked Patch, pointing at the Centipede Room. Meinkewitz gave Patch an odd smile, accompanied by a throat-clearing laugh. Centipedes have a few dozen legs to a few hundred, which is how they got their name. Centipedes are quick and deadly. They live sometimes up to 5 years. What the hell's in that room, Ray? Asked Patch as Mike laughed at the rapport between Meinkewitz and Patch. Hold on, Patch. I'm still answering your question. They eat spiders, crickets, cockroaches, and worms. Is this what I signed up for? How about lizards, snakes, birds, and frogs? They'll attack any soft-bodied creature they feel they're capable of killing and eating. Meinkewitz removed a white card from his wallet. I can hardly wait, said Patch. Meinkewitz opened the door, revealing a 20 by 20 room with an IBM computer system that must have been cutting edge. I negotiated this with Denali. Money for research, to be used at Barton College later. Who is Denali? You know, I can't tell you that, Patch, because I don't know myself. Patch rolled his eyes and nodded. We're using this for physics and time dilation. There's no way I'll be funded for a large project like Hastings Mountain. So I'll be working my off hours on focused power directed at the existing bubbles. All in computer simulations, of course. Mean I can return to Sherry and the boys. Displacing an existing bubble, Patch, is light years away. We may at the least gain some insight. Also, there's classified research happening at the Pentagon right now to begin a connection of computers that patch what you've told me will be the internet in the future, linking your personnel, corporate, and government computers. If we had that ability, we could move faster than the intel agencies. We'll have to settle for teletypes, blue boxes, newspapers, radio, and TV. Patch walked around the room. Oh, it gives me hope that I might be able to get back home. In the meantime, I have constant info on the teletype. They exited the centipede room and Meinkewitz secured the door. Then he walked over to the paper-fed teletype machine in the corner of the bigger room. Wait, what I don't understand is why would somebody spend all this money, said Patch. What if somebody taps into that machine? The lines are secure, said Meinkewitz. He ripped off a short report off the teletype. The duly elected government of the United States was overthrown in Dallas, Patch. Our network was set up to help take down those individuals who killed the President of the United States. Secrecy is paramount. Biography, Erling Carruthers Garrison. Is that his name? Asked Mike. Yeah, born in Denison, Iowa, 1921. Only son of Erling R. Garrison and Jane Ann Robinson, divorced when he was 2. His family moved to New Orleans, raised by his divorced mother. He served in the Army Air Force during the war and joined the year before Pearl Harbor. Got his law degree after the war from Tulane in '49. He worked for the FBI in Seattle. Joined the National Guard before the Korean War. He has repeating nightmares of past missions, shell-shocked, severe and disabling psychoneurosis, totally incapacitated for military duty and moderately in civilian adaptivity. But the Surgeon General differed. They found him to be physically qualified for federal recognition in the National Army. Damn. Civilian life, held several trial lawyer positions, law firm of Deutsch, Kerrigan, and Stiles from 1954 to '58. Then he was assistant district attorney and one New Orleans DA in January of '62. So he was on the rise, said Patch, glancing at the metal-framed teletype machine. He went right into stopping prostitution and all the crap in the Bourbon Street bars and strip joints. Vice raids in the French Quarter every night. Newspapers liked him. Then he went after the corrupt judges, accusing them of racketeering and conspiring against him. The 8 judges charged him with misdemeanor criminal defamation, and Garrison was convicted in January 1963. Really? Asked Patch. Now wait a minute. 3 years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned the conviction and struck down the state statute as unconstitutional. In '65, Garrison won with 60% of the votes, running for re-election against Judge Malcolm O'Hara. Late last year, he started the investigation into the Kennedy assassination. It was Jack Martin who told Garrison that Ferry may have been involved in the assassination. He's got balls taking them on, said Meinkewitz. That's Jim Garrison. Just after 7 p.m., after he cooked a dinner consisting of franks and beans and brown bread smothered in butter, Meynkewitz's blue box vibrated.
This is Denali.
Yes, sir.
Tompkins and Beauregard are listed as missing.
With the news, Patch gripped the arms of the captain's chair. What does this mean?
As reported, the operation was done in conjunction with the Air Force and others. They aborted the mission after the explosion. We just don't know if Lieutenant Tompkins and Commander Beauregard were in the SEMCOM portion of the Powell building. The building was incinerated by the blast.
In conjunction with whom? Asked Patch.
It would appear from early reports to be anti-Castro people and an American identity unknown.
Patch walked over to the sink and poured himself more water. This is just awful.
Search teams are looking for Commander Beauregard, Lieutenant Tompkins, Briggs, Prescott, and Patch Kincaid.
Me? Asked Patch.
Finding out how security was broken may be more difficult. We will minimize blue box contact and use network names when on channel.
Understood, said Meinkewitz.
Teletype is secure and will be constantly monitored for possible breaches.
What about Ferry? Asked Patch.
You will contact Ferry and meet as scheduled. If we can convince him to completely cooperate with Garrison, we'll be ahead of the reporters and the federal government attacks.
I understand, said Patch in a depressed voice.
Everyone, you're safe where you are. Be vigilant and armed at all times. End transmission.
Patch leaned over the downstairs table. The teletype document from 15 minutes ago stated that search crews found the remains of 2 bodies. Patch left the room and retreated upstairs. He grabbed a cold beer from the refrigerator. Meinkewitz emerged from the stairs. I'm sorry, Ray. I know you and Vinny go way back. Meinkewitz looked out the screen door into the little yard in front of the fence. Well, we don't have any definitive word yet, Patch. Patch did not want to deny anything, nor did he want to talk reality with his friend. His whole body seemed to implode from the inside when he thought about Tompkins and Finney possibly incinerated in the Powell building. He was still trying to cope with Sherry, Sam, and Johnny so far away in time with no possibility of return. Is Finch behind this? Unknown. I don't even know what the guy looks like. Meinkewitz turned, his face drawn, his eyes forlorn. Oh, he's a real pretty boy, Patch. Yale Law School. Well connected? One of the best agents they have. Murdering people doesn't say much for his character, does it, Ray? Don't jump to conclusions. Rogue operations can become runaway operations. It may have nothing to do with Finch. Right. You like Churchill, Patch? Sure. We're both going through some bad stuff here. It's not the first time. Can't take our eyes off the ball. Churchill said, if you're going through hell, keep going. Patch nodded. That's good advice, because letting yourself fall apart doesn't change a bad deal. We'll finalize the ferry meeting. Make sure he goes to Garrison. Let's face it, Ray. That man has to be shaking in his boots. Patch stared at the black and white photograph on the front seat of a preppy man with thick brown hair and a handsome countenance. The man known as Baker Finch was less than 6 feet tall, in good shape, and had an engaging smile. Finch stood at a meeting of men in suits inside a hotel lobby with a large grandfather clock. Meinkewitz had told Patch he was surprised that any photo of Finch existed at all, and he believed that the picture was taken from a distance by French intelligence. He stuck the photo in the glove compartment and locked it. At the last minute, before Patch left for New Orleans, Ferry changed the venue to the far side of the expansive Huey B. Long Bridge. Ferry called it the Old Bridge, and they met under the second trestle within a clump of trees, shielded from the bridge and the outside. Patch had on wire-rimmed sunglasses, jeans, a lightweight shirt, and a red ball cap. Ferry wore wrinkled pants, a dark sport coat, shirt, and touring cap. He said he had alopecia, and he had done something weird to his eyebrows. He removed the sunglasses, and his sonorous voice sounded self-righteous. Patch, where's your girl? In hiding. Smart. Lemon and lime. That's what they called us. We saw you in Galveston right after President Kennedy was killed. Yeah, so what? I want to know who Garrison has investigating me and why. Patch adjusted his sunglasses below the ball cap. District attorneys are all dumb anyways. There are rumors all over the place that I'm going to be arrested. I haven't heard that. That's what I want you to do. Find out what the hell they want from me. I mean, shit, they won't even let me work at the airport now. And I need you, Patch. If I have to get out of town, get me to the airport. I can do that, said Patch, knowing Meinkewitz would never sanction such an action. You know my record with Roselli. Yes, sir, I do. Ferry positioned himself on the concrete pylon. He repeatedly tightened his facial muscles. You're CIA, David. And I know how close you are to Marcelo. How you got him out of Guatemala after Bobby Kennedy dropped him in the jungle. Ferry closed his eyes. Are you all right? Asked Patch. Encephalitis. And those bastards from the press, radio, and TV, they're all over me. I've had it. The phone rings from morning till night. That Sam DePino from Channel 12 bugs the hell out of me to the early hours of the morning. Got nothing to say because Sam's trying to con me is what he's trying to do. Then don't talk to them, said Patch. Look what the goddamn press did to Marcello and Hoffa. Tried to frame them. Garrison is trying to frame Miguel Torres. I have big-time attorneys from Washington if they try anything with me. Garrison and his fucking no-comment bullshit. He ought to just answer the questions. No comment stirs up more shit than an hour's speech. Garrison knows this, and he was obviously using this for his own publicity. I have my sources, David. You know I do. Garrison wasn't trying to frame anybody. He was avoiding the press. He couldn't say much less than no comment. You're in deep shit, Patch. I hear all the big boys at the top want you dead. I do want to talk to Garrison personally. Can you arrange that? Yeah. Then you must be connected, but not to those who killed Kennedy. Correct. Let's talk about Jack Martin. Ferry's eyes ignited like a rocket launch from K. Kennedy. Fuck Jack Martin and the horse he came in on. He's a no-good bastard. He's the one trying to bring me down. Martin started all this bullshit. Martin is a little shit who's jealous because Ray, Gill, and I are close. You saw me in the Marquette building. Okay. Patch studied his sunken eyes. Was Martin a part of the assassination? Martin is a screwball and should be locked up. So what? You gonna tell that to Garrison? I'll tell Garrison what I need to tell him. Garrison doesn't get it, my friend. Some people are trying to torpedo him. 3 people on the local level and a couple of people on the national level. What are they afraid of? Asked Patch. Ferry tilted his head back and laughed. You're a funny man, Patch. Roselli likes you. What do you think the mother was doing in Dallas, lining up things on the ground with Jack Ruby and the cops before the 22nd? Roselli was in Vegas when Kennedy was killed. Oh, of course he was. You saved his life, and the rest of them. Roselli will never screw you over. Who locally is after Garrison? Frank Klein is one of them. Ruin him politically and embarrass his investigation. You'll see in time. The vultures will descend upon Garrison. Garrison criticized Hoover. Hoover was one of the people on the national level who would destroy Garrison. Cops are like the Keystone Cops. I hate cops. They're all bastards. I heard that some high-level people in Washington were talking about the investigation. What do you mean? They said that Garrison would call a press conference Friday and give the story to the press, and he did. I'll clam up about them and Hoover. I don't want Hoover on my ass. You need to speak to Garrison like you did in '63. He's more than serious, checking out all leads and information. Tell me about the assassination. I'll get word to Garrison. I'll tell Garrison anything myself, Patch. I'll look him right in the face. What about November 22nd, 1963, David? Made a trip to Houston, ice skating with 2 other boys. Patch rolled his eyes. What, Patch? All I wanted to do was relax after the Marcello trial, and that's my fucking story. It was the worst trip I ever made in my life. Okay, ice skating. What else? Asked Ferry. Patch threw up his hands. I don't know. You tell me, David. Garrison arrested me when I got back to town. I was booked as a fugitive from Texas, and I've never been to Texas. I didn't believe they'd arrest a man who was perfectly innocent. Ferry laughed. You got a lot to learn about life and still believe in the descriptions on the courthouse walls. You'll see that this is a stinking world. That's great, David, but it still doesn't tell me about the arrest. Again, I want most of this said to Garrison himself. Listen to me. I'll go through that spiel again for your benefit. After the trip to Texas, Alvin and Melvin Coffey and I stopped by Alexandria, and he called Ray Gill. What did Gill say? Asked Patch. Cops were looking for me, and they wanted to ask me some questions about the assassination. Wow. Yeah, wow. I drove back to New Orleans and dropped off Alvin at his apartment on Louisiana Avenue Parkway, so he could go upstairs and call some girls for them. Oh. Patch heard the cars distant above on the bridge, and the breeze cooled his face. Coffee then went to the grocery store. Coffee and I were returning to the apartment when we noticed a bunch of cars around my apartment and a shitload of people. Had to be cops. I went back to the store and telephoned. Some dumbox answered the phone. Tried to suck me into a conversation, but he just hung up. Then they dropped coffee off and went to Hammond, Louisiana. Where in Hammond? Ferry laughed heartily. I'll say one thing for you, Pat. You sure try hard. I'm just trying to save my ass, David. I had nothing to do with this. I'll vouch for you if it comes up. Thanks. Just don't try and investigate me. Patch didn't press the issue any further. I could stay with a friend if they get on my ass. Besides, he said, I've got friends all over the world. That's very interesting, but I want your opinion on one other small matter. Well, what the hell is that? David, who shot the president? Oh, well, that's an interesting question, and I've got my own thoughts on it. Ferry pulled out a sheet of paper and began to sketch the Texas School Book Depository, the Kennedy Parade route, and the rest of the area. I could definitely draw a conclusion if I had more information and facts. Ferry then went into a long rant about the trajectory of the bullets in relationship to height and distance. He said that different guns and shells have different trajectories, and that the bullets tend to drop. The Warren Commission didn't have enough pertinent scientific information to come to an objective conclusion. I didn't read the Warren report, but what I did read showed me those jamokes didn't know what they were doing. Patch's mouth remained open as Ferry talked about Kennedy's neck wound. In the course of his lecture on anatomy and pathology, Ferry named seemingly every bone in the human body, as well as where the hard and soft muscles are located. He talked extensively about dermis and epidermis. You think the same bullet hit Connolly and Kennedy? He burst out laughing. Oh, cut the nonsense, Patch. Connolly or JFK had to be a contortionist for that to happen. He then rattled off more scientific information about the bones and skin, how a bullet decreases in speed when it strikes an object, and how the same bullet could not have possibly caused all that damage. That question would never be asked because the doctor that performed the tracheotomy had 10 thumbs and left unanswered the most important question of all time. Doctors are almost as stupid as lawyers. The lawyers are worse because they're always in your pocket. Patch put his hand on Ferry's shoulder. In other words, David, you don't buy the one-shot theory. One more time, I don't want Hoover on my ass. I'll work the whole thing out and then I'll call Garrison in his office. Patch was taken aback how Ferry was in very good spirits and was laughing and joking. He even said he was feeling pretty good. I have one more thing to say about the one-shot theory. Later, David. Darkness settled over the river and the bridge. Tell me more about your trip to Hammond. Ferry smiled. Go to hell. You ever stay with Clay Shaw? Who's Clay Shaw? All right, if that doesn't ring a bell, how about Clay Bertrand? Who's Clay Bertrand? Clay Shaw and Clay Bertrand are the same person, David. Who the hell said that? Dean Andrews. Ferry gestured with his hands. Dean Andrews might tell you anything, Patch. I have to go, said Patch, shaking Ferry's hand. Call me. One more question. What? You know Oswald? No, of course not. They were all upstairs in Grassley. Patch transcribed his notes. Then you're saying that he doesn't know who shot Kennedy? Asked Meinkewitz, holding a coffee mug. Oh, I think he does, said Patch, but he isn't going to tell me. And you say he was lying about Clay Shaw. We saw him 3 years ago with Shaw, and Shaw is CIA. Let Garrison interrogate him. Hold on, said Meinkewitz, handing Patch a photo of Ferry and others from the early 50s. The photo was inserted in the canister and then the pneumatic tube during the middle of the night. Holy shit, that's Oswald on the right. Sure is. Ferry can tap dance around all these irrelevant issues, things we already know. Somebody set this whole thing in motion. Maybe they just pointed Jenkins and his men to Dallas instead of Havana. Proving is another thing, said Patch. Listen to this, said Meinkewitz. They've got the 25th Amendment now, ratified last week. Now they can kill or get rid of the president, and it's all codified in law. Why did Ferry meet with you at all, Patch? Asked Dr. Mike. That's a good question, Dr. Mike, said Patch. I think he believes he can use me if he needs to get away real fast. Mike pulled the photo close to his face. Yeah, that's Oswald, all right. We're not sure what Garrison has uncovered, but we'll try with Denali's contacts to include the information he might not have. We'll use a courier system. It's simple, that's why it'll work. Reports will be inside a magazine. Well, just how does this courier place information about Ferry into the DA's office, and who inside the DA's office will accept it? Asked Patch, pouring himself some coffee. Coffee, Mike? Yeah, I'm all set. The courier works in the same building and has for years, Patch, said Meinkewitz. Everybody knows him. The magazine will be dropped in a secure place where the specific investigator will pick it up. One guy, that's it. The investigator will study the inserted content. Then he can present or not. I hope it works, said Patch. Sounds risky. We'll just do our job at this end, and Denali is giving us permission to use the blue box now that we're in the field. Anything definitive on Beauregard or Natalie? Asked Patch. Meinkewitz shook his head. He put his hand on both Patch's and Mike's shoulders. Faith is the bird that feels the light and sings when the dawn is still dark. Rabindranath Tagore. Chapter 13. 977 Mulberry Road, Grassley, Louisiana, February 18, 1967, 8:20 a.m. Meinkewitz held up the New Orleans State's item paper. They're reporting that Garrison is officially investigating the Kennedy assassination, and the article names David Ferry as a suspect. Meinkewitz handed the paper to Patch. Here's today's item. That's not good, said Patch as he shoveled in more scrambled eggs into his mouth. He looked at the small portable TV on the counter. What happened to the Today Show? What's the matter? Don't you like Captain Kangaroo? Asked Meinkewitz as Patch swallowed the eggs and laughed. Mike turned to Patch. Ray tried to recruit Mr. Green Jeans into covert operations. I'm a physicist, Meinkewitz continued to laugh. I left the CBS Morning News on and Kangaroo was next. Green Jeans, that's a good one. Patch, you need to talk with Ferry again. Make plans to get him out of town now. Garrison is going to question him again. We can't just drive him out of town, Ray. Temporary. He has to fear for his life now that it's out to the public. Ferry staying alive is critical. Garrison wants him stowed away at the Hotel Fontainebleau, using a fake name, which is probably a good thing. Meinkewitz turned to Mike. Mike, find out the identity of all these local Yoko reporters who are causing trouble. We need to find out who's compromised. You got it. How does this relate to Jack Martin? Ferry hates Jack Martin, said Patch. Meinkewitz pointed at Patch. Sure he does. Martin is investigating all the dirt on Ferry. Ferry, being a homosexual, firearms possessions, he gave that info to somebody at the FAA and to the WWL. Martin said Ferry was an amateur hypnotist, something about hypnotizing Oswald, which is nonsense. So Garrison spoke to Jack Martin. Jack Martin opened his mouth, said the animated Meinkewitz. Garrison wanted to know why he shouldn't find out what's going on in Bannister's office. And Martin said what we face especially is being in the shadows. He also said the problem is that we're going to bring the whole goddamn federal government down on our backs. Do I need to spell it out? I could get you killed, and so could you. I understand, said Patch. What about DeValley? DeValley, said Meinkewitz. DeValley is linked to the CIA, Santo Trafficante, and Senator George Smathers. Veto. Patch, DeValley hired Ferry to firebomb missions over Cuba. With the money from smuggling with Santo Trafficante, he's rolling in dough. He paid Ferry $1,500 per mission. Where is he, Miami? Exactly. You had the relationship with him, albeit from 3 years ago. A minor relationship. Meinkewitz began again. And I heard a report from a contact that Tracy Barnes is a CIA big deal. Barnes wanted 4 Mannlichers 7.35 millimeter surplus rifles, according to Denali's contact. He wanted to alter the 4-piece on each rifle so the rifles could be dismantled, hidden, and reassembled quickly. I heard that too, said Patch. This is why I want you to talk to DeValley. In '63, DeValley wanted 4 transceivers. which are not detectable by any communications equipment then available on the market. Are you kidding me? Asked Dr. Mike. For the hit in Dealey Plaza. Yeah, that's what they did, answered Meinkewitz. I want that on the record. Because the guy who was going to pick up the transceivers was David Ferry. I think that Del Valle is like Ferry. He's not going to talk, said Patch, wiping his lips with a napkin. Listen up. I received information from Denali 5 months ago about Del Valle. He came through Cuban intelligence when I was at Hughes. In '62, Eladio Del Valle tried to infiltrate Cuba with a 22-man commando group. Reliable reports state that Del Valle maintained during the mission that Kennedy must be eliminated to free Cuba. Other intel said Tony Cuesta swore that Del Valle was a player in the assassination plot against President Kennedy. Even if Garrison gives him immunity, no one's going to tolerate the likes of someone who had Kennedy killed, said Patch. All the Cubans and ancillary characters have to be scared out of their underwear that Garrison is looking into the assassination. Like Denali said, we'll be sending couriers to a contact who in turn will make sure the information is screened before Garrison gets it. I'll call Vito on one of those secure lines. When do you want me in Miami? ASAP, or in New Orleans if Del Valle travels to New Orleans. Okay. Both of you, Captain Kangaroo and Mr. Green Jeans, continue to be armed at all times. Like Denali, I trust no one. February 19th, 1967. Incredible what they show on daytime TV, said Meinkewitz. Well, one of Garrison's former detectives is going to be interviewed, said Patch, standing in front of the TV. And there's a soap opera that comes on. Some woman traveling to Maine, trained to be a governess. Patch raised his brows and turned to a correspondent downtown, holding out a microphone. Nothing this man is saying has been verified, said Meinkewitz. Everybody wants to be a star, said Patch. Ferry is the one with the answers. He knows it all. True, said Meinkewitz, looking at the TV. The soap opera is about this 200-year-old vampire. Good, maybe he knows all the answers. As for me, I'm preparing to grill Ferry this time and find out about those paid flights to Cuba. David Ferry's apartment, Louisiana Avenue Parkway, New Orleans, Louisiana, February 22nd, 1967. Patch shut off Dedicated to the One I Love by the Mamas and Papas as he walked down the sidewalk wearing an army jacket. There were police officers on the scene. Patch immediately ducked along one of the adjacent houses. Behind Ferry's apartment, a white station wagon, similar to his Ford, was backed up to the wooden doors of the garage. Two uniformed men from the coroner's office loaded what Patch assumed to be David Ferry's body, wrapped in sheets and strapped to a gurney, into the open rear door of the station wagon. Patch, his heart flying, ducked below a wooden stairway and pulled out his blue box. In seconds, Meinkewitz was on the speaker.
Patch, why the hell are you calling me?
Ferry is dead, Ray.
What?
I don't know the details.
I want you out of there, Patch. Get back here right now.
Crouched over, Patch retreated at an angle back to the street. I'm heading back to the car. I'll be there in 45 minutes. Once behind the wheel, he drove as if he was under attack north to Grassley. Patch was convinced Ferry had known essential parts of the plot against the president and had been trying to make a deal with Garrison. On another level, having known Ferry, Patch respected his intellect and liked him. How had he died? Was he shot? You're in way over your head, David, said Patch, shutting off the radio. Way, way over. And what about you, Patch Kincaid? You're in worse. Meinkewitz and Patch walked down the rutted dirt path along the withered crop field. He donned his sunglasses. This is just too coincidental, Ray. In my heart of hearts, I expected it. If Ferry was what Garrison says he was, then it's obvious. How did he die? We don't know yet, he said as the blue box buzzed. Meinkewitz lifted the box to his ear. You've got to be kidding. Well, how much more blatant is that? That's grotesque. It's a message is what it is. No, we're out back, Patch and I. No, we're armed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Patch stopped on the trail near a rusted car frame. "What is it, Ray?" "DeValley. Murdered in the back seat of his caddy." "God almighty," replied Patch in a whisper. "In a shopping plaza in Miami. They shot him, tortured him, hacked him up with a machete and axe." Patch winced and then just stared at his friend. "So, take out Garrison's witnesses one by one, right out in the open." Patch panned the field and tried not to think about Vito being hacked to death. "Where's Mike?" "He just went to get groceries at the Winn-Dixie. He doesn't know about Del Valley." "Now what?" "Denali is leaving it up to us whether we want to abandon ship." "Well, I'm not leaving." "Sure, Mike feels the same way. Denali thinks Garrison will indict Shaw quickly. You think Shaw is CIA." Patch squinted toward the state highway at the end of Mulberry Road. It was very similar, if not the same highway he traveled with Sheridan to Clinton, Louisiana to spy on Oswald in the summer of 1963. He is CIA. He was with Oswald and Ferry trying to set up Oswald. Damn these people. "Then we better make sure that Garrison's information jives with your information on Shaw. But we have to back it up. I have a stack of teletypes with Shaw information." Vito, what a way to go. Denali made contact with the blue box again after Mike returned. His voice was deliberate with several pauses that Patch interpreted to be fear. He said bluntly what everyone already knew, that the deaths of Ferry and DeValley meant conspiracy. This morning he had participated in a conference with two loyal military men, both, quote, on our side. Beauregard's and Tompkins's bodies were never found at Hughes, which left Patch even more depressed. A few seconds later, Denali spoke with an almost official voice.
"Over the post-war years, we have granted to the elite and the secret police within our system vast new powers over the lives and liberties of the people. At the request of the trusted and respected head of those forces and their appeal to the necessities of national security, we have exempted those grants of power from due accounting and strict surveillance."
"It's exactly what happened at Hughes," said Patch.
"With the help of Palakas, they made a connection with your car you left at Mount Wilson and Hughes. We just don't know how they connected it all to Hughes Air Force Base. I can't comment on Beauregard and Tompkins because of the investigation."
"Just never ends. I swear, Ferry knew what was coming." Denali spoke over Patch's last words.
"Here's one reason we know Ferry was involved in the plot against the president. A former airplane mechanic who was employed by Ferry named Jimmy Johnson went to work for him. Ferry would tell Johnson a package would be arriving for him shortly. A sports car would be parked in the front of the airport's main building. Windows up but doors locked. Every 10 to 15 minutes, Ferry demanded Johnson check for the car. When the car arrived, Johnson would find a brown package taped to the bottom of the package, and he was supposed to bring that package to Ferry."
"Payoff, Denali?" asked Meinkewitz.
"Exactly. The car arrived, and Johnson followed the instructions, and when Johnson brought the package to the administration building, Ferry took it into the bathroom to examine the contents. He came out full of excitement and announced that he was going to buy a brand new car. Ferry deposited more than $7,000 in cash into his account in the weeks immediately preceding the Kennedy assassination."
"Now we'll never know," said Mike.
"Well, we'll know, Mike. We won't have Ferry to testify in a court of law as to who paid him and why. Our first magazine drop to the investigation will contain documents on the paid flights to Cuba by Ferry and the payoffs."
"What about this Finch? Did he work in New Orleans with Ferry and the gang?"
"Others, but not Finch unless he was working with Helms and his people."
"What about the attack on Hughes?" asked Patch.
"Baker Finch was involved in the planning."
said Denali. "That man has made big enemies down here."
"I understand,"
said Denali.
"We have studied Federico's photos at the breakfast restaurant. We have ID'd Rick Anson currently working for a man named Sidney Gottlieb."
"Who?" asked Meinkewitz.
"Mind control. of human subjects. Dulles and Helms know about it. There's been success in transforming the human mind. They've hit it well, and at a deadly cost. LSD, electric shock, sensory deprivation, possibly hypnosis.
What the hell are these clowns doing around Corona? Asked Patch.
That ties into the third man in the photograph, Phineas.
Patch shot to his feet. What?
We think they may be performing or are going to perform these mind control techniques on Phineas. All three men flew to Los Angeles International Airport, then to Fort Detrick in Maryland. Our assessment is that they're passing through Southern California for a specific purpose.
Ah, now it makes sense, said Meinkewitz. Detrick hosts the U.S. Biological Defense Program.
That is correct. Finch's role is probably supervision.
And Finch is like a general, said Patch.
Well put, Patch. A general in the field, but his power makes him extremely dangerous.
Right, said Meinkewitz, as witnessed by his possible involvement in the Hughes attack. Patch remained standing. John Phineas is already dangerous. To bring him into mind control is crazy.
Tracking these individuals is easy, but we'll stay on it as well as determine why they were in Southern California.
Patch was about to speak, but Meinkewitz shook his head.
Now, this is the first drop into the Garrison investigation. I'll be sending the magazine by our courier to the Mulberry Tube. We'll move quicker than we would have now that Ferry is gone. We'll also provide Clay Shaw information via the secure teletype. The investigation may have some or all of this information or not. You will secure the documents in the plastic holder and roll the magazine into the shipping tube.
And then what? Asked Meinkewitz.
Drop-off point for the delivery to the investigation is Sunday, the U.S. mailbox, the corner of Main and Spooner Street in Grassley at precisely 7 a.m. The lower part of the box will be open, don't worry about it. Deposit the mailing tube as you would a letter in the top of the mailbox. Then wait in the station wagon in the Winn-Dixie Plaza. It will be picked up by New Orleans businessman George Gardner and delivered to the district attorney's office on Sunday afternoon, where it will reach our designated investigator's mail slot. I know this is a massive amount of information, and bear with me. It will be worth it. End transmission.
In the morning, after a full night's sleep, Patch emerged from the house carrying a plate with a couple of roast beef sandwiches. Meinkewitz held up another newspaper. Starting a paper route, Ray? Asked Patch. This is the New York Times. It was mailed to us. Then by all means, read it out loud, Ray. Death of Ferry called natural. Autopsy doctor rules out suicide in New Orleans. By Gene Roberts, special to the New York Times. They're saying that Ferry died of natural causes. Garrison isn't saying anything about it. And then there was a typewritten note where Ferry wrote, "To leave this life for me is a sweet prospect. I find nothing in it that's desirable, and on the other hand, everything that is lonesome." Well, he typed a suicide note, Ray? Here's the write-up on DeValley, said Meinkewitz. Problem with newspapers is they only put in what they want you to know. Ex-Batista aide found murdered. 977 Mulberry Road, Grassley, Louisiana, February 25th, 1967, 8:06 p.m. Meinkewitz stood in the living room but watched the TV console. So, Jackie Gleason is 51. I'd like to have my own birthday show on a TV. Well, that show would be canceled immediately, said Patch as they headed for the open stairs to the offices below. Very funny. Seriously, Ray, I'm worried about them killing off suspects, and I'm worried about this drop. Them being the powers to be. Right. It will work. We're going to start with the people who knew Shaw masquerading as Clay Bertrand, said Meinkewitz as they entered the Brighton conference room. And from what's been sent to me, there's plenty, along with classified documents. How about actually linking Clay Shaw to the CIA, said Patch. Denali is aware of that and working on it. You do that and the whole Kennedy plot blows up. They won't be able to stop the public pressure. Meinkewitz pushed a button, closing the bricks upstairs. Mike handed a clear canister to Meinkewitz. This was placed in the tube overnight. Inside was the magazine, which must have been inserted into the transparent tube. Meinkewitz popped the latch and pulled out the parodied Mad magazine for next month, March 1967. On the cover, the odd and quite gawky red-headed wonder, Alfred E. Newman, loaded a toothbrush with a bristle gap that mirrored the space between his front teeth. Patch looked up at Dr. Mike and then at Meinkewitz. "Listen up," said Meinkewitz, handing the magazine to Patch. "There's a plastic packet insert behind the parody of Kent's cigarettes." "Misery is a cigarette," said Patch, reading the parody. "Funny. Just leave cigars out of it," said Meinkewitz. Patch turned the page, revealing the clear plastic insert. "Let's double-check what we typed." Dr. Mike gave the sheet of white bond paper containing 2 classified memos to Meinkewitz. Action item number 1, February 23rd, 1967. Attention, Office of the District Attorney. Clay Shaw is known in the French Quarter as Clay Bertrand. Witnesses to Shaw with Oswald are Shaw as Bertrand, Nicholas Tadden, Perry Russo, Edwin Lee McGehee, Reeves Morgan, John Manchester, Henry Earl Palmer, Corey Collins, William E. Dunn, William Morris, James Hardiman, Gene Davis, Vernon Bundy, Mrs. Jessie Parker, Attorney Dean Andrews. He checked over the teletype. Everything looked in order. "This is ironclad. Clay Shaw is Clem Bertrand." "They have to make the alias stick," said Meinkewitz. "I wish I had gotten Ferry out of the area," said Patch. "Can't blame yourself, Patch." He lifted the teletype message up from the machine. "This teletype states what the late Mr. Ferry said to Lou Ivon, one of Garrison's inspectors, when the story broke about Garrison's investigation. Here's what Ferry said. You know what this news story does to me, don't you? I'm a dead man. From here on, believe me, I'm a dead man." Truer words were never spoken. Patch was the courier. Early Sunday morning, he parked the Ford station wagon a few hundred yards back, next to the blue dumpster in front of the Winn-Dixie parking lot. With the tube tucked under his short army coat, he walked across the empty parking lot. Beyond the Winn-Dixie, there were several smaller stores bordering a rural side street. Then he walked along Spooner toward Main Street. The blue and red mailbox with the white trim was only 30 feet up the sidewalk's grassy border. Patch was at the box just long enough to lift the lid and deposit the tube, stuffed with enough incriminating material to bring treason charges. He then returned to the station wagon. 15 minutes later, the spiffy red Thunderbird pulled up to the mailbox. A middle-aged man in a dark suit positioned himself in front of the mailbox. He lifted the lid handle. Then he performed a swift maneuver, opening the front of the mailbox. It was closed quickly, and the tube was in his hand. He pretended to close the lid and was inside the Thunderbird in seconds. The car slowly moved away from the curb and took the first right at the light. Patch waited another 5 minutes and then drove back to the state highway. The rest was up to the contact inside the district attorney's office. 977 Mulberry Road, Grassley, Louisiana, February 26, 1967, 11:37 a.m. "Well, I don't trust Russo," said Patch. "The fact that Russo will only talk if he's riding around in a car erodes his credibility." Meinkewitz set the blue box on the counter. "He's scared, Patch. You know who we're dealing with, and look what just happened to DeValley and Ferry." "You're right." Mike's voice then clearly filled the speaker, both blue boxes next to the reel-to-reel tape recorder. Patch heard someone shift the car.
David Ferry is dead. Did you know him? Yeah, from a friend in the Civil Air Patrol. Ferry ever threatened President Kennedy? Yeah, I heard him say it'd be easy to assassinate an American president in public, you know. He said he could get a plane out of the U.S. after. What exactly did he say about killing Kennedy? I heard him make a threat around a month before Kennedy was killed. Ferry mention Oswald or any anti-Castro people? I never heard him mention any anti-Castro guys. I heard Spanish-speaking men in green military fatigues in Dave's Louisiana Parkway apartment. Names? Don't know. Did Ferry hypnotize people? Oh, sure, he had some kind of degree. You ever talked to D.A. Garrison? I wrote Garrison a letter, but I haven't heard from him. Ferry was crazy against Kennedy, that's all.
Oh, that's enough, Meinkewitz told Patch. I think this guy heard Ferry threaten the president. So what? It's a threat. Lots of people threaten presidents. Yeah, but not many presidents get assassinated. Doesn't bring us any closer to those who ordered Kennedy killed, said Patch. It will if Garrison can branch out from Ferry. That means associations. Eventually it leads back to them. Any statement from Bobby Kennedy about Garrison? Asked Patch. Nothing. Let's see where it goes. Patch's blue box buzzed for a few seconds. He looked at Meinkewitz. Here we go, Patch. Meinkewitz pushed Denali's button.
Delta 7 implement. Gentlemen, congratulations. AGA now has next month's copy of Mad Magazine.
Meinkewitz clapped. Well, that's great news. The system works.
Absolutely. Our next drop will be Mark's research. From Dallas through the autopsy at Bethesda. We're looking for feedback from the district attorney's office about the Shaw-Bertrand connection. A man named Sutcliffe will pick up the tube from a trash bin located near the orangutan cage at the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans. He'll get it to a specific investigator's mail slot. It's important that we vary these drops. It will be placed in the trash bin at precisely 12:30 p.m.
Well, we're good to go, said Meinkewitz. Will they use this information? Asked Patch.
We'll find out. End transmission.
There you go, Patch. Now you can relax. Ray, I won't relax until I'm back home at Apex Junction. Chapter 14, 977 Mulberry Road, Grassley, Louisiana, March 1st, 1967, 2:20 p.m. Vietnam combat deaths, March 1967, 403. In the lower office, Patch positioned himself in front of the portable television on the counter as the gray-haired Garrison spokesman stepped up to the microphone and read a statement.
On March 1st, 1967, the first arrest has been made in the investigation of the New Orleans District Attorney's Office into the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Arrested this evening in the District Attorney's Office was Clay Shaw, age 54, of 1313 Dauphine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. Mr. Shaw will be charged with participation in a conspiracy to murder John F. Kennedy. It should be pointed out, however, that the nature of this case is not conducive to an immediate succession of arrests at this time. However, other arrests will be made at a later date. This is District Attorney Jim Garrison, official press release.
Ferry would have been arrested and would be watching him now, said Patch, looking over his shoulder at Meinkewitz in his blue and gold UCLA ball cap and hoodie. I never would have believed this would happen in the United States, said Meinkewitz. Later, Garrison spoke.
The situation speaks for itself. We made an arrest. There will be more arrests. And I have no doubts whatsoever about the case. I said this some time ago, and I meant it. And when I say there will be other arrests, I mean that, and they will stand up.
Has Mr. Shaw professed his innocence?
No comment about that.
I believe you're on a lie detector test.
I don't want to comment in any way on Mr. Shaw because I want to lean over backwards, not to...
Meinkewitz sauntered, as if he were edging his way on a diving board, to the New Orleans map filling the far panel downstairs. Patch was not sure just what he was thinking about. He traced a route with his index finger as the teletype machine initiated in the centipede room. Meinkewitz gave one more glance at the map and then entered the room. He grasped the edge of the moving teletype. Ah, this is interesting. Just shows we're going through huge amounts of information. We're going to need to be detailed and not make a mistake with the attack coming on Garrison, said Patch. This is interesting. What is it, Ray? Do you know Walter Sheridan? Patch shook his head. Work for the NSA, the CIA, FBI? Oh, here we go. They're coming at Garrison big time, probably through Russo. Sheridan is Bobby Kennedy's right-hand man. Well, that makes no sense, Ray. Why would Bobby thwart an investigation into his brother's death? Maybe to cover his own ass with the anti-Castro stuff. Or Bobby knows more about this than he's publicly saying. I just wish he'd run against Johnson. I'd work for him, said Patch. I would too. Patch pressed his lips before speaking, but in the same breath, they won't let him become president. Meinkewitz studied a second teletype from Denali. Salvatore Penzica, one of Shaw's lawyers. He's going to say that Clinton trip with Oswald never happened. Ray, erupted Patch. Sherry and I saw the whole thing. I wish we had those surveillance tapes. Patch, you'd be a dead man if you came forward about Clinton. You wouldn't be able to prove it. Garrison has to convince the jury with witnesses that Shaw is lying. Meinkewitz looked up from the teletype. Denali says that Shaw had a lucrative arrangement with an agency funneling pertinent information. It's one thing saying that, said Patch, but actually having people testify is another thing. And what about Jack Martin, Bannister's guy? He's affiliated with the agency, Patch, and can't be traced. Patch lowered his head and then rose like a lion. These people really piss me off. As far as Shaw being outed by the CIA, the agency has profiles, project files, that will never come out unless Denali is able to get them out. I think he will. I get it. Look at this one, Patch, said Meinkewitz, slipping a photo across the table. CIA's Counterintelligence Division knew of Oswald well before December of 1960. They even opened an Oswald file. Patch glanced at Meinkewitz as he sat in front of his computer. Does that help Garrison? Not without testimony. It helps us if we want to take these people down. Patch sat in the chair next to the teletype machine. Does Denali have a plan for that? I'm told it involves litigation. Chapter 15, 977 Mulberry, Grassley, Louisiana, March 8, 1967. The living room's taffeta floor lamp shades had a murky ivory glow, and the TV blasted out The Virginian, a western in color. The episode was unusually brutal, even for the Old West. The Virginian isn't in this episode, said Meinkewitz with his arm looped over the flowery couch. I never watched much TV until we came here. No woman in this episode either, said Patch, sitting up in the recliner. How about this news? Said Meinkewitz, holding up Life magazine. Hoffa is finally in jail. Really? Is he in this episode too, Ray? Meinkewitz grinned. You know what Hoffa said when somebody told him President Kennedy was dead? No. Bobby Kennedy is just another lawyer now, said Meinkewitz. Tough guy, Hoffa. Patch looked at the photo in Life magazine of Hoffa, taken from far above entering prison. He could be in this Virginian episode. Hoffa in the magazine and Charlie Brown on the cover, said Meinkewitz. The wolf and the lamb. Patch half smiled. With all of Mike's research going into the tube, I'm a little nervous about this drop. It's highly classified. There's also a transmission between the White House and Air Force One on November 22nd, 1963, thanks to Denali. Nobody has that full information, not the transcripts as much as the summary he heard. Garrison can subpoena a lot of people, Ray. That's the ticket. Getting back to now, Mike should be done shortly collating and condensing what we're sending along with Gardner tomorrow. When is Denali calling? Asked Patch. 9 p.m. sharp.
Well done, Dr. Mike. They moved the president's body. There'll be no doubt in anyone's mind if they read that summary.
Planning for this had to be extraordinary, said Meinkewitz. With just minutes to spare transferring the president's body, said Patch. Denali spoke again several seconds later.
We tend to give the planners credit, yes, but not everything went the way they wanted. They improvised on the fly. I think they were bringing the president to Walter Reed, but it never happened.
They thought they'd just walk out of Dallas with his body.
The adrenaline was flowing on both sides. Let's go over this. Patch? Read this one more time, and we'll get it in the Life magazine insert.
Action Item 2, March 9th, 1967. Tension, the Office of District Attorney. 2 caskets. President Kennedy declared dead at Parkland Hospital at 1 p.m. Protracted confrontation between Dallas County Medical Examiner and Secret Service about removing Kennedy's body from Dallas. With weapons drawn, the Secret Service takes control of the body. The president's body and head, wrapped in sheets inside a bronze casket, is taken aboard Air Force One at 2:14 p.m. Bronze casket is placed on the left rear side, seats removed. Jacqueline Kennedy boards the aircraft 2:18 p.m. President Kennedy's body is removed from the bronze casket between 2:18 and 2:38 p.m. and taken through the rear galley door and into the rear luggage compartment. LBJ sworn in, center aircraft, 2:38 p.m. Air Force One leaves Love Field for Washington, D.C., 2:47 p.m. Air Force One communications tape indicates Secret Service personnel referring to the body. I'll have to call you again after the body. The bronze casket unloaded empty from Air Force One, taken in a light gray Navy Pontiac ambulance, 6:04 p.m. Numerous witnesses observed a gray shipping casket arriving at Bethesda Naval Hospital. Kennedy is in a body bag, 6:35 p.m. Arrived in a black Cadillac mortuary-style ambulance. Numerous witnesses observed a gray shipping casket arriving Bethesda Naval Hospital. Kennedy is in a body bag, 6:35 p.m. He arrives in a black Cadillac mortuary-style ambulance. The bronze casket arrives at Bethesda at 7:17 p.m. Wound alteration. The Siebert O'Neill report. Surgery of the head area, namely the top of the skull. No trace bullets. Salient points. Agent Kellerman tells Agent Ben everyone is on board, that they are waiting for the swearing in to take place, waiting for a judge to arrive. Kellerman suddenly tells Ben, I have to call you back, Jerry, after the body. The fact that there was surgery to the skull should alert one and all to what they were doing. Disgusting to desecrate the president's body, said Meinkewitz, and then he just aimlessly stared at the counter. And then they have the phony artist rendition of the back of his head, intact, said Patch. I saw the hole in back of his head. Patch, you won't be going to a mailbox drop-off, said Meinkewitz. Come on, Ray, said Patch, standing. Just to be cautious, in case someone saw the last drop, you'll be traveling to the Audubon Zoo in New Orleans. You'll be armed. No blue box, because even though we think we are secure, there's always the possibility this drop could change everything. I'd ask you to reconsider. It comes from above, he said as Pat shook his head. Let's get these people into court. Audubon Zoo, 6500 Magazine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, March 15, 1967. Armed with a .38 automatic, Patch maneuvered the black Ford station wagon into a street space 2 blocks from the Audubon Zoo. He wore General MacArthur-type sunglasses and a lightweight beige jacket and jeans. Meinkewitz had neatly inserted the Life magazine with the documents into the white tube the Patch hid under his jacket. The gun was tucked under the jacket also, in a holster. He questioned because of the logistical change in the drop, and because of the communications blackout, that Denali might not be forthcoming about the danger. Once inside the zoo's warming spring air, he proceeded along the dirt path to Franz the orangutan's cage. Patch skidded to a stop when Natalie Tompkins, alive and well, appeared in light capri pants and lingered near the lion's cage. Well, hot damn, said Patch, smiling. She wore a kerchief, a sporty jacket, and wide sunglasses. Telling her that he was glad she was all right would be worse than stupid. He photographed Franz the orangutan. Then he made a face at the orangutan and casually slid the white tube into the corrugated trash bin. Patch questioned as he backtracked why Natalie was even here. He prepared for some kind of double cross as he sidetracked left toward the giraffes, poking their long heads over the stockade fence near a cluster of palm trees. Natalie, still a distance away, moved gradually with her snappy walk toward the trash bin. For a few minutes she also photographed Fritz. She remained close to the cage for a time, probably checking to see if the drop had been made, and then she slowly bopped along the asphalt path until she rounded the corner toward more exhibits. Then she was gone. Patch continued along the cages, taking photos until he spotted Natalie again, this time near the canal on the far side. He paused to buy a cold green glass bottle of Coke, and had just taken in the sparkling cola when gunfire echoed outside the zoo. His heart jump-started as he jettisoned the Coke into the grass. He held the butt end of the .38 Special and circled the jungle foliage between the cages. Crouching down near a small chain-link fence, Patch heard at least 2 different types of guns, one of which was a high-powered rifle. Along the bank canal, near the edge of the zoo, he spotted Natalie. She dived under her stomach as Patch crawled on his belly into the tall grass. A Latin man to his left balanced a rifle on a shipping crate and fired at Natalie. Patch, hunched over, paralleled the chain-link fence. As he neared the small maintenance hut, the dark-haired shooter swung the rifle toward him and fired, chipping the metal building. Patch assumed a shooting position quickly and shot the rifleman, and the man fell to the asphalt. Patch leaped over the fence near the shed. He found the Latin man on the ground next to the crate, his cold eyes frozen to the sky. Patch grabbed the rifle and a handful of ammunition. A middle-aged crew-cut man, also in fatigues, ran down the canal and closed in on Natalie. As he raised his handgun, she rolled on her back and shot the man, the force lifting him upward before he tumbled into the tall grass. Holding the hunting rifle, Patch vaulted the fence. Natalie slowly looked up as additional men in Army green combat fatigues exited a blue pickup. "Get down!" yelled Patch. She belly flopped into the grass again as the soldiers, with their weapons held high, attacked the canal area. When they began firing, Patch dove into a muddy stretch bordering the waterway. In the gully, he aimed and repeatedly fired the rifle. One of them went down. His attack allowed Natalie to roll over the bank. Bullets splashed in the mud around Patch as the soldiers now inched forward on their stomachs along the grass between the canal and the bank. He slithered on his belly toward the bushy outer edge of the muddy ground. At the top of the bank where the foliage ended, he tracked the men with his rifle. Natalie had twisted down the bank only 50 feet away. Patch again fired, hitting another man, but they shot his right shoulder. As if punched by Ali, he flew backward into the foliage. Natalie emerged up the bank and engaged the remaining soldiers. She staggered and fired on the run. 2 more men collapsed to the ground. The last man retreated down the canal bank and entered the truck, which quickly departed the area. Natalie ran toward Patch, who had fallen forward onto his blood-soaked jacket. Oh, man. The ball cap was gone and her hair scattered. "Patch, I need to get you to a hospital. I don't have my blue box. Drive me back to Meinkewitz." Denali ordered network silence. "Well, where's Meinkewitz?" "Out of the city," he said, becoming weak. "Your shoulder." She unzipped his coat, removed the jacket as Patch winced and moaned. She tightly wrapped the fabric around his shoulder. "I count 4, maybe 5 men dead. Oh, it'll be all over this place." Patch paced his breathing to avoid the pain. "Ford station wagon, black, outside the entrance." "This wound is going to become infected," she warned. "Mike." He tightened his face and gripped the rifle in his right hand. "Don't worry," she said, putting her hand on his cheek. "I never leave anyone behind." Patch did not want to believe he had grown alarmingly weak. Pain was localized and constant. Natalie didn't know about the Grassley house. She steadied him back to the station wagon as his strength diminished. She had flipped down the rear door and rushed around the side. Wrapping her arms around his waist, she physically pulled him inside. Somebody had known Sutcliffe was receiving sensitive information. Natalie had followed orders from Denali to track Sutcliffe to Patch's tube drop-off in the zoo. Without the backup, Patch might have been killed. "Hold on, Patch," she said, placing her right hand on his other shoulder. She handled the station wagon with her left hand, zooming at high speed up the state highway. "They were military, not CIA," said Patch with his eyes closed. "Army Special Forces." Patch became conscious in spurts. "Stay awake, Patch, stay awake." Just stay awake. His voice trickled off. Yeah. Okay, where do I turn? Mulberry. Patch. Off the state highway. Where? Patch regained consciousness. She had stopped the station wagon and leaned over him. Patch, where is Mulberry? Grassly line. Left or right? Felt her hand on his hand as he lost consciousness. He did not sense they were moving anymore. Patch was like the electric power of waning and then popping back on during a storm. Time flowed in sectors like a strobe light across the room. Patch saw Meynkewitz's face to his left. He was still in the car as Meinkewitz shouted, "Oh, God almighty!" "Never got the tube," whispered Patch. "Forget about the goddamn tube, Patch." Then he heard Mike outside. "There's a team being helicoptered from Houston. Get him to the kitchen table," cried Mike as if he were in a combat zone taking incoming wounded. "We can't move him." "Shut up, Ray. He's lost blood. I can clean and dress the wound." "What's his blood type?" "How the hell do I know?" asked Meinkewitz. Patch drifted out again. "Patch, your blood type," said Natalie, pushing by Meinkewitz. "Where do I lift him?" "What if you dislodge that bullet?" asked Meinkewitz. "Under the thigh," said Mike. "Ray, get on the other side." Patch again skipped ahead. They were carrying him under the trees and up the front porch steps. "Locker, downstairs, wallet, blood type." He sensed being carried through the open door. They set him on the edge of the kitchen table. When he awoke, Mike had a black medical bag on the counter. In his hand was a hypodermic needle. Patch felt the pain slowly diminish, but grogginess set in. Patch closed his eyes. He smelled some type of antiseptic, and then another needle entered his lower arm. Minutes passed like seconds. An intravenous bag had been set on a pole. Meinkewitz called upstairs. "Type A! Type A!" "Call Houston, Ray. South Texas Memorial. Dr. Alan Richardson." Patch never heard Meynkewitz's reply. The last image he saw was Natalie's serious blue eyes less than a foot from his face. She squeezed his hand and he went out. He snapped into consciousness in the low light and felt as if someone had clamped a vise with needles around his shoulder. They had propped him up and his right arm was slinged. The IV bag was connected atop a pole and he was on a gurney. Confusion pervaded his foggy thoughts. Damn. A black nurse with permed hair appeared across the room and ran up to Patch. "Nice of you to join us." "What happened? Where am I?" "You were shot outside the Audubon Zoo. Dr. Cameron, Miss Natalie, saved your life. Surgical team from South Texas sewed you up, sir. You're lucky. No bone damage. I'm sure you're in pain, but you're going to make it, Mr. Pauls. Do you need something for the pain?" "Who are you?" asked Patch in a scratchy voice. "I'm Nurse Wallace, sir. Our team got blood to you." "Where's Meinkewitz?" "They were all pretty much exhausted, are presently sleeping upstairs, except," she pointed to the couch along the wall. Natalie slept soundly under an orange blanket. "She was very concerned about you." "I'm in the lower office," he said, watching Natalie breathe as she slept. "Yes, sir. There's a security contingent guarding the grounds and the house for further notice. 2 men, Charles Dawson and Jerry Samara." Patch closed his eyes for a few seconds. He checked Natalie again. "Where'd these men come from?" "I suggest you rest, Mr. Paulson." Patch just kept nodding his head as he fought to stay awake, but he was fading like the sun sinking below the ocean horizon. He whispered Sherry's name as the darkness set in. Patch had been told by Meinkewitz that the 2 security men came from Denali's contacts. It was as if he now had Secret Service protection on Mulberry Street. They had gotten him upstairs and he turned from the window. "I owe you, Natalie. You dropped the lieutenant and called me Natalie in your delirium." Patch smiled. His shoulder was stiff and sore. "Natalie." In her green and white Tulane sweatshirt she smiled. Her wispy brown hair was pulled up under her cap. "I only did what you would have done, Patch." "You can always trust your eyes, Patch." "Sometimes. Thanks. You're welcome." But if it wasn't for you, Patch, they would have shot me in the canal. I don't remember. Patch squinted and looked her in the eye. Wait. How did you survive the explosion at Hughes? Unless you have a twin sister, obviously you did. And contacted Denali. Where's Beauregard? I don't know where Phineas is or if he survived at all. Biggs and Prescott were identified. It's terrible. I've been told that Baker Finch was involved in the planning. Patch nodded. How did they track me? He asked. They were following Sutcliffe. I checked the zoo perimeter before I went in there, said Patch, still weak. They just attacked along the canal bank, as if they know you would be there too. I was ordered and I began surveilling the zoo, paralleling Sutcliffe. Is he dead? Asked Patch, reaching for the water cup. Natalie lifted the cup and steered the cup to his mouth. Patch sipped the water. Thank you. You're welcome. She set the cup back on the table. I had been across from Tulane for 15 minutes. I saw 2 men take Sutcliffe out of his car. They marched him into the alley. I have photos being developed as we speak. We'll assume that Sutcliffe is dead or at least being interrogated. Meinkewitz appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Ah, Dr. Meinkewitz. About time you woke up, Patch. Tell me what happened with Sutcliffe. For the first pickup, the gentleman in the T-Bird, Gardner, only knew about the tube pickup and nothing about the magazine or the insert. He got the tube in the mail slot in the office. Who is Sutcliffe? Asked Patch. Sutcliffe is an attorney from Baton Rouge. We used him because he can be totally trusted. He was to retrieve the tube and get it to our contact, who has access to the investigation. Natalie shadowed Sutcliffe to New Orleans as per Denali's orders. Even with the gunfire, Sutcliffe already had the tube with the documents. Simply stated, security was broken either from within the investigation or somewhere else because Sutcliffe was captured. Sutcliffe must have been followed, or they tailed him constantly, said Patch in a hoarse voice. He cleared his throat and Natalie handed the water cup to him. There's 2 options for us, both being considered by Denali, said Meinkewitz. Shut this place down, or just lay low for a while and try to find another way to get the information to the investigation. The downtime will allow you to recover, Patch. Plus, we can organize more documents for future drops. So we could get shut down, Patch wanted to know. Yes, answered Meinkewitz. Where were you coming from, Natalie? Asked Patch. The airport, Patch. I took the bus and changed stops to get to the zoo. I'm sure they already knew. What about Finney? Asked Patch. I don't know, she said in a subdued voice. I was driving a jeep along the base perimeter when the central building exploded, and I just kept on driving all the way to Oxnard. I used my box to call Denali. It took an hour and a half, but he sent me to San Francisco. I drove up the Coast Highway. I lived with 2 women who worked in a congressional office up there, all under the radar until I got my assignment for the zoo. Why were you selected? Asked Patch. Her special ops experience, said Meinkewitz. Patch nodded with a smile. Oh. Somehow it leaked, said Meinkewitz. We had no idea you were alive, and I assume no one in the network knew either. Yet, security was broken. As of right now, only the first action items have gotten to the investigation, said Patch. Meinkewitz faced the TV. Hold on, Patch. Check this out. They're going to interview that lawyer, Dean Andrews, downtown. That guy, said Patch. Let's see which side of his mouth he's speaking from today. We'll know more when Denali contacts us, said Meinkewitz. Look, Patch, you know how it works. Yeah, I know how it works, Ray. Meinkewitz turned as the sunglassed Andrews, who fashioned himself a cool cat, began taking questions from reporters.
Man, I wouldn't know Clay Shaw if I fell across him on the street dead.
Has the occasion arisen for you to listen to Clay Shaw's
yes,
voice?
since all this popped up, they had him on TV, so I just shut my eyes and listened to the voice, and that's not the voice.
In other words, you're saying that Clay Bertrand is not Clay Shaw?
I'm saying that the voice of Clay Shaw is not the voice that I identify as Clay Bertrand.
All right, now you have seen Clay Bertrand on 2 occasions.
2 times.
You have seen Clay Shaw's picture in the newspaper?
Since this happened, many times.
Okay. Can you say positively that the person you knew as Clay Bertrand is not the person you have seen as Clay Shaw?
Scout's honor, he is not.
Now, did Mr. Garrison at one point ask you about certain operations across Lake Pontchartrain?
Yes, I think we discussed that.
Did he ask you if you knew any of the people involved?
I think he did.
What'd you tell him?
Manny Garcia Gonzalez and Ricardo Davis.
Did you know Mr. Gonzalez?
No.
Did you know Mr. Davis?
No.
Where did you get those names?
Out the air.
In other words, these names were fictional as far as you were concerned?
Well, I'm trying to see if his cat's kosher, you know.
So what?
So he's kosher, I don't know.
So you just picked 2 names out of the air?
Right.
Now, why did you do that?
Well, I don't know what he's up to. He's picking me like chicken, shucking me like corn, stewing me like an oyster. I mean, he ain't put nothing down but air, so I give him 2 names, see which way he's going.
In other words, you made up 2 names to see what he was going to do with them.
Right.
What did he do with them?
Well, I don't know. Hasn't done anything yet.
Well, have you had any occasion to have him talk to you about either of those names since then?
About 2 weeks ago on a Saturday, we talking, and he picks up a weapon with an item number on it.
What kind of a weapon?
Pistol. Semi-automatic. Black. Probably 7.6 millimeter. I didn't examine it. And says that Manny Garcia Gonzalez in Miami or someplace down there got busted for carrying a concealed weapon. And I told him Manny Garcia Gonzalez was never busted in his life. I didn't believe it. He put the weapon back down. We talked some more. And that was it. I left.
Did he tell you this was a gun taken from this man?
From Emmanuel Garcia Gonzalez. Now, I don't know if the Manuel Garcia Gonzalez he's talking about is for real, or if the Manny Garcia Gonzalez is the name that I pulled out of the air. This I cannot say.
What was your conclusion from that conversation?
Well, if it's the Manuel Garcia Gonzalez that I told him, he's got the right ta-ta, but the wrong ho-ho.
This guy is the biggest bullshit artist I've ever seen in my life. Patch drank a cool lemonade and munched on saltine crackers at the conference table. "Do you want a sandwich, Patch?" asked Natalie from the chair at the bottom of the gurney. "Maybe later, thanks." His shoulder pain was not as sharp. "You just let me know," she said. Meinkewitz held a teletype in his hands. "Our sources confirm that Shaw is indeed the one who heard Oswald on TV and then called Andrews. Let's put it in perspective. Here's what Oswald said when he was asked in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, did you kill the president? He said, no, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed legal representation during that very short and sweet hearing. I really don't know what this situation is all about. Nobody has told me anything except I'm accused of murdering a policeman. I know nothing more than that, and do request someone to come forward to give me legal assistance." "So, Shaw heard him, or was told," said Patch. "Yes, sir, and that's why the fast-talking Mr. Bullshit Andrews was contacted," said Meinkewitz. "Who told Andrews to back off and attack Garrison?" asked Patch. "I'd like to know that one, but it's in the Warren volumes that a man calling himself Clay Bertrand asked for his legal aid for Lee Harvey Oswald on the day of the assassination." "It's not just cut and dry," said Patch. "I know that," said Meinkewitz. "It's only so much that Garrison investigation can do. Garrison has to balance what the government will do to him in the investigation. He has to be able to prove it with witnesses. Just knowing won't cut it. Garrison needs what we have." "You better hire the combat boys, Ray," said Patch. Natalie leaned toward him. "I thought that happened to us today." Somebody already did.